He humiliated the waitress in front of everyone, but she silenced him with one single gesture. The sound of the slap cracked through the hall like thunder, and everything stopped. The music cut off, the laughter evaporated. In the middle of that hall, Jessica stood, breathing hard. Nicholas's face was red as fire, his hand resting loosely on his cheek, his eyes fixed on her as if he'd just been dragged into the public square. And he had, along with his pride. It took him a few seconds to react. He blinked slowly, like he was coming back to reality. He ran his tongue over his lips, savoring the humiliation in silence. Then he smiled, a filthy smile, loaded with hatred that never reached his eyes. "You really think this is how it's gonna be? You disgusting piece of trash!" Nicholas yelled, his voice slicing the air like a razor. "Who gave you the right to raise a hand to me? People like you forget the hole you crawled out of. But I'll remind you. I'm going to destroy your life, you piece of garbage. You'll crawl to earn back the right to carry a tray." He turned his back and walked out without even throwing a final glance at Jessica. The double doors were still swinging when she finally breathed again. But that wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. A few minutes earlier, Jessica had crossed that hall with a tray balanced in her hands. Eyes focused, steps steady, the precise care of someone who knew every step. It was the event of the season. Powerful people, fake smiles, shoes shining brighter than eyes. At the main table, Nicholas, a feared businessman, known for humiliating people without restraint. Jessica adjusted her collar. She thought about the bills. "Just one more shift," she whispered to herself, then headed for the main table. Jessica approached with a bottle of wine, ready to pour. The glass, already set in front of him, waited for the final touch. But the exact moment she tilted the bottle, one of the guests stood up in a rush, bumping the tablecloth with his hip. It happened fast. The glass slipped, the wine flew, and fate had its way. Dark red spread across Nicholas's expensive shirt, soaking the fabric. He sprang up like someone had spat in his face. He looked at the shirt, then at Jessica, and his eyes narrowed to blades. "This is what happens when they let just anyone serve real people," he shouted, loud enough for half the hall to hear. "It's always the same, useless, clumsy, stupid." Jessica swallowed hard, her body locking up. "It was an accident. Someone bumped the table. I can clean it, sir," she said, her voice breaking at the end. Nicholas slammed the table so hard the flatware jumped. "Don't touch me. Stay in your place. You disgust me just standing this close. You can't even serve. You only know how to embarrass yourself." She dropped her eyes for a second, just long enough to choke back the tears grinding up her throat like ground glass. She started grabbing napkins, trembling, but he took a step forward, closing the space between them. "Look at me when I'm talking to you, or are you going to run like everybody from your kind?" He growled, his hot breath hitting her face. The murmurs started. Entire tables stopped eating. Heads turned. Jessica felt the weight of every stare like chains, and then he threw the final blow. "You shouldn't even be in this hall. People of your color should know to shut up and disappear into the back of the kitchen." The world spun. Her body acted on impulse, on dignity, on everything she'd swallowed for years. Her hand rose on its own. The slap landed clean, direct, violent, a crack that shattered the silence into 1,000 pieces. And right there, everything started to crumble. That night, no one spoke to her, no manager, no co-worker. Eyes sliced back and forth like sharpened blades, but mouths stayed shut. She walked back to the kitchen in silence, the echo of her heels on the floor. She untied her apron with hands that still shook. She took one last look at the hall through the crack in the door, then slipped out the back. The next morning, the phone rang. The manager's voice was dry, blunt. "You don't need to come in anymore. Legal already handled it. The order is clear. If you show up, we file suit, understood? But you didn't even hear what happened. He attacked me with words. Jessica began, but he cut her off. It won't help. His name carries weight. We can't go up against him. I'm sorry, Jessica, this is better. She hung up without saying anything. She stood there in the kitchen, phone in hand, the news jammed in her throat. When she walked into the bedroom, her mother was on the edge of the bed, face wet. "You okay, honey?" her mother asked softly. Jessica tried to smile. "I lost my job." Her mother closed her eyes. She didn't ask how. She already knew. 2 days later, Jessica's sister came home from work with slumped shoulders and a hollow stare. "They let me go," she said, dropping her purse on the couch. "They said it was budget cuts, but the director's face, it was like he was scared to tell the truth. He wouldn't even look me in the eye." Jessica sat down slowly, her head spinning. "You think it was because of me?" The question hung in the air, too heavy for an answer, and in that silence, Jessica understood that the fallout didn't end with her. It spread like cracks through a wall already fragile. That same day, Jessica's boyfriend came home later than usual. He avoided her eyes and dropped his backpack harder than he meant to. "I got called into a meeting," he said, no warm-up. "Someone filed an anonymous complaint, said I'm violent. Your name came up, Jessica. They said I hit you." She clapped a hand over her mouth. "That's a lie. I never said that. I would never do that to you." "I know," he said, voice low. "But what do you think they see? A guy like me with a girl like you. And now that's seen on the internet in the hall. You think they're going to take our side?" She reached for his hand. "We'll prove it's a lie. We'll do it together." He slowly pulled his hand away. "I don't know if I can handle this. It's a lot. I'm losing my footing too." Jessica felt the blood drain from her face. "You're leaving me?" "I just need to think," he said, already getting up. "I need to breathe." The next day, he didn't come back. No apology, just silence. The kind that doesn't come from forgetting, but from refusing to face things, and that hurt more than any words. The messages started right after. Unknown number. Short, blunt. "You'll pay. You'll regret laying a hand on me." The life has a funny way of putting people back in their place. Each one hit like a stab, but none hurt more than the one that arrived in the middle of the night when she was trying to sleep, hugging a pillow. You can leave the place you came from, but the place never leaves you. She didn't reply, but she didn't delete them either. She saved everyone. Meanwhile, Nicholas showed up in photos, smiling at events, dinners, trips. Standing next to powerful people, crystal flutes in hand and speeches ready. "We need to value merit, respect, hierarchy," he'd say, eyes cold, teeth on display. In one interview, asked discreetly about the incident with an employee, he just smiled and said, "That's been resolved. She paid for what she did. I moved on." Jessica watched the scene sitting on the kitchen floor, an empty plate in her lap, her fingers gripping the rim. The TV shook. So did her heart. Her mother cried in the bedroom softly, like she wanted to hide it. Her sister spent the day locked away, avoiding the outside, afraid of the looks. And Jessica, she only kept going because her anger wouldn't let her disappear. She tried to find work, anything, a bakery, a store, a call center, cleaning, everywhere the same cold reply, "We'll be in touch." But nobody called back. The stain was there, invisible. And every time she read or heard Nicholas's name, it was like someone rubbed salt in it. She didn't know how to move forward, but she knew she couldn't stop. What she didn't know yet was that this was only just beginning. It was on a grey Wednesday, when Jessica hadn't picked up unknown numbers in days, that the phone buzzed again. She thought about ignoring it, but something made her answer. The voice on the other end was steady, measured, sure, not arrogant, but not tentative either. "I need to talk to you, in person. It's important." Before she could ask who it was, he added, "My name is Ronald. We were at the same party. I promise I won't take much of your time. Just hear me out." She hesitated, mouth dry, eyes worn out from distrust. But she agreed. They set a meeting in a discreet room, in an old building away from the bustle, the kind of place no one would notice. When she arrived, her heart hammered like she was about to face another trial. The room was simple, 2 leather chairs and a forgotten folder in a corner, and there he was, Ronald, one of the party guests, a contractor, a familiar face, a friend of politicians, always on Nicholas's level of power. But here he looked different. His eyes were heavy, his face unposed, and he didn't try to smile. "This must feel strange," Ronald said, quiet. "But I had to see you." Jessica stayed standing, frozen, not sure if she should sit or just leave. He went on without circling around it. "The night of the party, my daughter was with me. She saw everything. She saw the way he talked to you, how you tried to explain, and the slap. She tugged my arm and begged me to do something. I told her to stay quiet, said it wasn't our business, but she hasn't forgotten. And since that day, she looks at me like I failed her. Because I did." Jessica finally sat, but without leaning back. The tension was still loose-wired through her body. Ronald watched her for a few seconds before continuing. "When we found out you'd been fired, she started to cry. She said I let an injustice happen right in front of her, and she's right. I stayed quiet, out of cowardice, out of convenience. But there are things we don't fix with apologies, so I'm here to try however I can." She didn't say anything, she just listened. Every word hurt, but it also lit up something that had been buried for days. Ronald pulled a folder from his bag, opened it slowly, and set a flash drive on the table. "I tried to get the event's camera feeds, asked the organizers. They said there was a system failure, that the footage was lost, so I went another route. My friend's kid, you know the type, filming everything on his phone. He was at the party. He recorded a lot of it, got everything. You serving, the wine, the shouting, the humiliation, and the slap. In exchange for a few favors, he gave me the video. It's all here." The world stopped. Jessica stared at the flash drive like that tiny object weighed a ton. She couldn't speak. Her palms were sweaty, shoulders tight, eyes stinging. Finally, she whispered, "You're sure? It's all there?" Ronald nodded, firm. "Yes, and more. You can clearly see the wine spilled by accident. You tried to clean it. He cornered you, and you reacted. There was no unprovoked attack. There was humiliation. His camera doesn't lie." Jessica eased back against the chair, took a long breath, then fished her phone out of her bag. Her voice came out thin. "There's something else. He texted me. In the days after, threats, not direct, but, you know." Ronald nodded without breaking eye contact. "Save everything. That's evidence too. Put it all together. We're going to use it." She still didn't know where to start, but she wasn't alone anymore, and Ronald didn't stop at words. He called a lawyer right in front of her, low profile, known for working far from the spotlight, but with a track record of winning tough cases. "He'll handle this like it was for me," Ronald said. "This time, on the right side." Within days, the lawsuit was filed. Evidence attached. The video, the messages, Ronald's statement. Straightforward, impossible to ignore, with legal consistency and enough weight to punch through the wall of silence. The strategy was clear: make noise without leaving any room for under-the-table deals. But Nicholas wasn't the type to sit quietly. His response came as a cheap shot. A video posted on social media, him holding his young daughter, both crying. His voice choked, face drawn, speech prepared. "My little girl is being attacked. She doesn't even understand what's happening. But she cries every day because of this. Because of a lie. They're destroying a family." Within hours, the video spread. Headlines popped up, comments exploded. "Are they punishing a child for the father's mistake?" some said. "Look at that little girl! How is this fair?" others cried. For the first time, his narrative seemed to take hold. It was gaining traction. Jessica watched the video on her phone. Her hand shook so hard she almost dropped it. Nicholas, now hugging his daughter, turned someone else's pain into his stage. The slap had vanished. What remained was theater. And from the outside, people couldn't see behind the curtain. "He dragged his daughter into this," she murmured, nearly voiceless. Ronald snorted on the other end of the line. "Coward! That's emotional blackmail, but people will fall for it." That's when the dirtiest hit landed. The lawyer who'd taken the case, the one Ronald trusted, simply disappeared. No calls answered, no texts returned, no explanation. 2 days later, he showed up on TV standing next to Nicholas, his new attorney. He sold out," Jessica muttered, face white. The frozen frame of the lawyer, smiling behind the microphone, looked like it was mocking her. It wasn't just betrayal, it was public scorn. For the second time, justice had slipped right through her fingers. Ronald took a while to answer. He sat on his porch, phone pressed to his ear. He sold himself for money, without a shred of shame. That whole week became a nightmare. The child video went viral again, now remixed with sad music and inflamed commentary. Social media split into camps. The news framed it as two sides of the story. Tabloids called it exaggerated. The party video, once showing the full sequence, started circulating edited, muted, trimmed to the slap alone. No context, no verbal abuse, no shouting. The pressure kept building. Jessica began getting new messages, some threatening, others just cruel. "You destroyed a family. Your hatred is against a child now. Disgusting ingrate. And worse, you're going to pay for what you did." She thought about giving up, but Ronald wouldn't let her. "Now it's personal," he said, his eyes steadier than ever. "If he thinks he can buy everything, it's because he's never had someone truly powerful on the other side." That same night, Ronald made a phone call. Short, direct. On the other end, Charles listened in silence, a name that needed no introduction. Owner of the biggest law firm in the country, a man who'd represented ministers, CEOs, heads of state. He hadn't practiced in years. He just ran the machine. But when Ronald told the story, Charles stayed quiet the whole time. And at the end, he just laughed. "I was actually looking for something interesting to keep me entertained. Send her over tomorrow." Jessica arrived at the office the next morning. The place commanded respect. Books, diplomas, quiet. Charles watched the video, read the messages, went through the papers. When he finished, he said only, "It's going to hurt, but it won't go unpunished." With that line, Charles wasn't promising victory. He was guaranteeing a fight. And for Jessica, right then, that was enough. Restarting the case was like an avalanche. The whole legal team moved. They called witnesses, cross-checked data, rebuilt Nicholas's public timeline with dates of supposed payouts, hushed-up scandals, broken contracts, and invoices no one had dared question before. Charles ran it all with surgical precision. Every detail passed through him. Anyone who still doubted he'd earned his reputation learned that week what it means to face a man who doesn't need to raise his voice to level reputations. And then others stepped forward. Women who had worked with Nicholas and had been silenced by fear or forced settlements. A former secretary said she lost a baby after being shoved during an argument. A receptionist brought voice recordings of him saying, "You know with your color, no one will believe you." A delivery worker revealed he was assaulted for not using the back entrance. A cleaning lady showed old bruises and said she bumped into him by accident. The district attorney's office took the case. A formal investigation was authorized. Nicholas tried to leave the country, but was stopped. A search warrant went out. They seized phones, computers, company documents. The press that had hesitated now backed off. Major papers opened their pages. The society columns went quiet. And then came the day he was taken into custody. He claimed political persecution. No one believed it anymore. Even his allies disappeared. Days later, the arrest was upheld. No bail. He'd faced charges for assault, harassment, and obstruction of justice. The empire fell, but the one who stayed standing was her. And now, rebuilding was the only option. She didn't celebrate. She just closed her eyes for a moment, like someone finally finishing the burial of a body they'd carried on their back. Jessica resurfaced sometime later, not on magazine covers or TV shows, in a small neighborhood restaurant, wearing an apron, wiping down a counter, swapping recipes. The place was new, small, but it belonged to a woman who had also suffered at Nicholas's hands, and when she heard the story, hired Jessica without a second thought. A few days later, Jessica called Ronald. She wanted to see his daughter, Kimberly, the girl who, even silent that night, had been the first to stand up. Kimberly came to the restaurant with a shy smile and bright eyes. Jessica walked up and hugged her tight. "You were the first to defend me," Jessica said, choked up. "I'll never forget that." A quiet, sturdy friendship started there. Ronald came back too. The visits became routine, real, present. Before closing that chapter, Jessica went to Charles's office. He received her the same as before, surrounded by books, serious expression. She walked in and held out her hand. "Thank you for everything." Charles raised his eyebrows, shook her hand lightly and let go. "Thank my nephew. I only got involved because I thought it would be fun." He paused, then added, "And in the end, it was." Jessica smiled. Her mother slept through the night again. Her sister went back to school, and the one who tried to bury them alive learned, in the harshest way, that some falls don't have a return. Because humiliating someone costs little, but getting back up costs everything. Nicholas fell. She stayed on her feet. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.